The state of Oregon is the third largest producer of fine wine in the United States, but accounts for only 1% of total U.S. wine production. While this might sound small, developments over the last generation have been dramatic, and today, Oregon is a global icon for quality wine.
Oregon is actually a huge place. I mean, it's as big as half of France, and it's got climates as varied as half of France.
Pinot Noir represents roughly 60% of Oregon wine and dominates plantings in the Willamette Valley. But throughout the state, other grapes are finding success within diverse climates, geography, and geology.
So it's hard to explain that there's a very different Southern Oregon and a very different Eastern Oregon where different grapes can be grown.
The perception of Oregon wine has changed radically in the 30 years that I've been here. Nowadays, you can go pretty much anywhere in the United States and talk about Pinot Noir, and people get excited to hear the word Oregon.
Oregon will continue to develop as a wine region. The Willamette Valley within it has such a lead that it influences the entire state.
For over a century, Oregon has been home to a thriving agricultural economy. While wine growing predates Prohibition, the modern era of commercial winemaking is only a few decades old.
In terms of agricultural endeavors in this region, they began right at the turn of the century, mainly with apples. And a lot of folks were encouraged to come west to settle farms and in the area.
There's all kinds of agriculture in the state of Oregon, along with Christmas trees, which is one of the larger agricultural crops here. And then grapes have come along, and they're slowly but surely growing up the chain as far as the largest number of acres planted.
The modern pioneers of the Willamette Valley emerged in the 1960s, with little winemaking or business experience.
The earliest winemakers to come to Oregon we call the pioneers, and they came, and there were the Dick Ponzis, the David Lutz, David Adelsheim. They came and started the Oregon wine industry, and they came at the time where you really had to be very collaborative.
We wanted to make quality wine right from the beginning, but back then, this combination of wanting to do it right, make incredible wine, and not realizing what they were setting out to do would be hard if they had tons of money, and they didn't even have tons of money. Nobody had even owned a business in this group of 10 families that started the wine industry in the Willamette Valley.
They had to work together because there weren't a lot of services in the area. There weren't a lot of places to go to find out information, to buy yeast or to buy barrels. You really needed to work together to make it work.
Oregon winemakers settled in on Pinot Noir with a near singular focus. While they drew inspiration from Burgundy, the small community's driving influence was their need to collaborate and learn from one another. Now that the Willamette Valley is firmly established, top-quality winemaking has begun to expand throughout Oregon.
When I first started in Oregon, there were 49 wineries, and now there's over 730 wineries in the state of Oregon. That's over a 30-year period of time.
Oregon's wine regions range from cool to moderate in climate and are broadly influenced by the coastal range and the Cascade Mountains.
So the cool climate areas in Oregon are primarily the Willamette Valley, number one, the northern part of the Umpqua, which is called the Elkton AVA, and then also the Red Hills AVA. The rest of them are primarily intermediate warm. And so that is going to be primarily southern Oregon, the Rogue Valley, the Applegate Valley, and the Umpqua.
Contrary to its rain-soaked stereotype, Oregon skies aren't universally gray.
Almost all of the vineyards that we have in Oregon are what we call xeric moisture regime. So you have a fairly wet climate for most of the year, but then in the months of July, August, and September, it doesn't rain, it's dry. And that's perfect for growing grapes.
You can have areas with a lot of rain, very little rain. There's areas that are kind of covered in rock, others that have very little rock. And that allows the winemakers and the vineyard growers to grow a tremendous breadth of varietals.
While the story of Oregon wine begins with Pinot Noir and the Willamette Valley, the growing success of its other regions is a vital element in a developing story. East of the Willamette is the Columbia Gorge, a new but thriving wine region that spans the border of Washington and Oregon along the Columbia River.
The Columbia Gorge AVA supersedes the state line, which is the river, Columbia River.
Although small in size, the climate and geology of the Columbia Gorge shift dramatically as you head east.
So as we go up in the gorge, we have Columbia River basalts, but we also have deposits coming off of older volcanics in the Hood River Valley. And some of the red soils that we have here are very similar to the red soils that we have in the Columbia River basalts in the Willamette Valley.
We have legitimate cooler climate, high elevation vineyard sites that are located to the western edge of the AVA. As you transition just 5 or 6 miles east, we come into a more Burgundy-influenced area where a lot of Pinot and Chardonnay is grown. and then you just move 5 miles further east, and you're growing Rhone varietals.
Recognition of the Columbia Gorge will likely grow. Today, the region is dominated by small producers, and due to the nature of the landscape, this is likely to continue. East of the gorge, the Rocks district of Milton-Freewater has been defined as an AVA within Walla Walla, but is contained entirely within the Oregon state border. The region's riverbed soils recall the galettes of Chateauneuf-du-Pape, and noteworthy producers have found a promising home for Rhone-inspired wines. Immediately south of the Willamette is the Umpqua Valley, defined by the mountain ranges that surround it on 3 sides.
The Umpqua Valley is somewhere between 30 and 70 miles from the Pacific Ocean, nestled between the Cascade Mountains, the Klamath Mountains, and the Oregon Coastal Range. The northern part of the valley, which has very little orographic barrier, is by far the wettest and coolest because of the marine influence. As you come south, the barrier becomes higher along the coastal range, and so the prevailing Pacific westerlies don't penetrate, and therefore we have a drier and a much warmer climate.
The northern Umpqua Valley's distinct climates have been instantiated into individual AVAs. In the Red Hills of Douglas County and the Elkton AVAs, cool climate grapes like Pinot Noir and Gewürztraminer thrive. In the southern part of the valley, Syrah, Malbec, and Grenache are commonly seen, although one unexpected grape has had particular success.
We had selected to grow Tempranillo and came to the Umpqua Valley specifically to grow it here because of the wonderful climate.
Now we have over 70 to 80 vineyards that are producing Tempranillo because we got the perfect climate.
Home to Oregon's first official winery in 1873, the Rogue Valley is the southernmost wine region in the state, extending to the California border. The Applegate Valley further defines the center of the Rogue Valley AVA.
I think that the beauty of both valleys taken in totality is the diversity of microclimate. Applegate Valley is west of Ashland, west of Medford, Oregon. It's in the very southern part of the state. Where we're standing right now is literally 9 miles from the California border.
Extreme weather can pose a threat to wine growers, but the climate is generally mitigated by surrounding mountains. Pinot Noir and cool climate grapes grow in the valley's microclimates to the west, while the temperatures trend warmer on the eastern side of the valley.
It seems to me that the Rhone varietals, the Syrahs, the Vignes, Roussanne, Marsanne are really starting to populate throughout the Applegate Valley.
The Rogue and Applegate Valleys are just beginning to find fame with a wide range of grape varieties, but the well-established Willamette Valley has always hung its hat on a single grape.
The Willamette Valley is defined physically by the area under about 1,000 feet where grapes can be grown and ripen, and where the water flows into the Willamette River and out to the Columbia and to the ocean.
We started off planting Pinot Noir back in the 60s, and it was pretty much decided that the North Willamette Valley was the best place to grow Pinot Noir.
We also ended up realizing that if we focused on one grape variety, that by all doing the same thing, that we could end up getting to this quality issue that was so important.
Producers reference an overarching Willamette style, but there are also tangible differences within subregions of the valley.
And a lot of us started talking about how distinct the different areas that Pinot Noir was being grown within the Willamette Valley. And so there was some work done, and it was back in the early 2000s where we started designating different AVAs to really reflect the Pinot Noir that was grown in those areas.
The McMinnville and Eola Amity AVAs are known for basalt soils and the influence of the Van Duzer corridor.
McMinnville has mixed soil series. You can have basalt soils, but you also have some sedimentary soils. Eola Amity is also a basalt soil AVA, and the Van Duzer corridor allows the cool ocean airs to blow in at night. So you'll see the temperature could be quite warm during the day, but it plummets very rapidly at night. And what this does is allow the fruit to ripen during the day, but really slow down at night. So the pHs tend to be a lot lower, the acidity a little bit brighter, and the fruit and the skins tend to be a little bit darker, so we get much darker profiled fruit than you would say from the Dundee Hills AVA.
In the center of the valley, the Dundee Hills is known for Jory clay, a volcanic soil that's often associated with aromatic red-fruited wines.
So the Dundee Hills AVA is one of my favorite AVAs, and it does make wines a very sweet, textured, I almost say perfumed feel to the wines.
In the northwest, the horseshoe-shaped Yamhill Carlton is defined by uplifted marine sediments, and its wines are generally richer in texture and dark fruits. In the northeast, the Shillelagh Mountain is a hodgepodge of complex soils, a fact that has encouraged producers to further define the area.
Shillelagh Mountain is actually right behind us here. It was subdivided to a smaller AVA that is all predominantly sedimentary soils, and that became the Ribbon Ridge AVA.
More recently, producers in the Shillelagh Mountain have singled out sections of the AVA characterized by silty laurelwood soils. While Pinot Noir accounts for more than 70% of the grapes grown in the Willamette, Pinot Gris, Pinot Blanc, Riesling, and increasingly Chardonnay are key to the region.
So Chardonnay has a long history in Oregon. It was planted alongside Pinot Noir. We're finding that more and more now, Chardonnay is being planted in the appropriate place with the appropriate clone, and it's becoming very exciting to see Oregon Chardonnay taking the national market by storm.
With the uncertainties of climate change, greater variance in weather could pose a challenge to Willamette Valley's focus on cool climate grapes.
We will need to work ever harder to ensure that the wine continues to taste like the Willamette Valley, meaning picking earlier as we have warmer vintages and getting a better handle on how to make great wine in the cooler and later vintages that inevitably get mixed in.
Looking into the future, the Willamette Valley and Pinot Noir will continue to dominate Oregon wine, although we can expect to see increasing recognition of Oregon's other regions and diverse varieties.
Pinot Noir has such a head start in the Willamette Valley at this point. I mean, 73% of this one grape variety means that for the next generation, 2 generations, maybe beyond that, the Willamette Valley will be so known for its Pinot that nobody will stop doing that.
I think you're going to see a lot of more professional knowledge about Oregon expanding further and further, maybe not just nationally, but internationally. So I think there's great potential for growth in Oregon.
Oregon wine has established itself with world-class Pinot Noir from the Willamette Valley. But the diversity of Oregon's other regions, both to the east and to the south, will complement this strength and make for a very exciting future.